Yo, check this out. This is Wayne Wonder, representing for Warieka LTV. You see the vision, don't it? See the vision. Warieka LTV. Keep it locked.
Now, I'm gonna tell you. We, us as bloggers, these are the issues that we need to address. You understand what I say? You see? Set the path for the youth. Share, like, and subscribe and stay tuned to the channel. I don't know all this. Greetings again in the mighty name of His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I first. You see. Welcome our viewers and subscribers. See? And if you just a pass through and you like the content, just subscribe and press the notification button so you can get a notification when the thing is up. You don't know. Everybody, share and like. What's a like? See? Now, character in the comment section, comment about me reading, a customer about me reading, some can't read and things like that. Trust me. We not pay that no attention. But what I do, I inspire me to come practice some more. So today I could get on with the with the maths, what we are do. See? What I like the character they know, say, as much as you do with your PhD and your degree and things like this, the book you're going to show you, say, a lot of people out there in our society of Jamaica today who my level of reading is quite relevant to the masses. My level of reading is on par with, or quite relevant. You got loads of people in Jamaica who cannot read at all. Seeing so, when them hear a youth like me now I read, it's a try to read and communicate with them certain history and certain reality, it's quite necessary. There's a demographic that see my reading as like, good reading. Seeing? So never mind that. Just stay upon your wavelength with whoever you transmit to. I can transmit to. Because I'm sure there are other people above you as well who are transmitting on a higher frequency than yourself. Seeing? It's like you say is a subscriber, but like only one video you watch. You know, you talk about people who always come with bragging rights, use education as bragging rights and things like that. Especially amongst us in our black community. Seeing them people they usually hold us back, always get set up there as a tower, like so well and them special or something like that. That's what they have been brainwashed and told. You see, like them can see themselves being special or different from the rest of us. Anyway, we're not going to go into that because my children them watch this too. See? I'm going to give thanks. Aye. See? Yeah. We're going like that. See? Anyway, big up my daughter them. We are learn about Jamaican culture and the gravity of certain things, boy. Yeah. You see, love my children. Them. See? Alright. See? So we'll continue with the book. Go and practice some reading. To my demography. Yes, I. Big up yourself, Mr. Nerville. You see you're a big man. Yeah? Mark Springer, a big man. You see it? Yes, sir. Jabi, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know. On the 29th of June 1972, the location of death row was changed because it looked like a summer have to start, animate my reading and things like that. Like, yeah. And a guy go and say, yeah, I can't read him. I read like him. Up on the podium at the university. On the 29th of June 1972, the location of death row was changed. Colonel Glenn Mignon, the then director of prisons, had fortified half the upper floor of a building previously condemned into the highest security block in the English-speaking Caribbean. It was the colonel's boast that none could escape from Gibraltar, as the building was called. Nobody had even successfully escaped from death row, though Maloney Garden, Junior Telfer, and Renford Salomon had tried, since Gibraltar was more secure and fortified than A1. The Colonel boast was loud. Now, Maloney Garden, Junior Telfer, and Renford Salomon. I'm not sure about Renford Salomon, but we know Maloney Garden and Junior Telfer are hot sniper. Real, the beginning of the whole revolutionary. You know, see the contrast when I try to bring to light to the youth. I know it not reach nowhere yet still, because it's a development. You know, see, yeah, it's even a learning process. And I to just like enough of them book here. At the first time, and I read them. Most people probably read them before, so that them can probably go through it with more comfort. See, I don't do that. I'm gonna learn it along with the island to feel more like a connection. So I say, yeah. See, so the Colonel boast was loud. The section remodeled at death row had 26 cells, 13 on either side of a 13-foot passage. Each cell was built with a concrete bed, table, and seat. Equipment consisted of 2 quart plastic jugs, a pint-sized plastic mug, a sheet bucket, and a new mattress and blanket. Unlike A1, these cells were free of the bugs and cockroaches. Yeah, okay. It's a new place them build. Because I think me don't want to find out where them buy to get rid of that bug and cockroach, so I can sprinkle some in the comment section. To the east of the building was a kitchen, bakery, and grocery, and that also functioned as the recreation ground. Before Gibraltar was a pool that was used for baptism and other times contained fish. On the left was an old 3-story building that was the stronghold of homosexuals, perverts, and recidivists. It was in this web of concrete and steel that the struggle began in earnest. Whenever and wherever men are oppressed, the time will inevitably come when the oppressed will rise, with violence, if necessary, to bring relief to their situation of life. Oppression is in fact a fertilizer for rebellion. Collectively, we were all being oppressed and subjected to the most brutal and degrading treatment in the bowels of Babylon. The fact that some on death row were guilty of the crimes for which they were convicted was outweighed by the many others who were innocent but were convicted and appointed to death. To my mind, our condition and status in society had not changed at the point of arrest. It was only a case that the place of our suffering had changed from the ghettos to the prison. All of us were born in a society that kept telling us we were free and independent people, but it was all a lie, the lie of emancipation. Born in a one-room tenement yard in the ghetto of Jonestown, not even as a fetus did I enjoy this much talked about. Freedom from that which sustained my life. My mother was no more than a slave. True, she had no stamp on her back or chains on her feet, nor did she work on a plantation, but she was still a slave, a commercial slave of the rent man who wouldn't hesitate to call the bailiff and throw us on the street if she didn't pay the rent on time. Slave of the grocer who would allow us to starve of life only if she slapped some money on his counter. Slave of her employer who only pay her enough to last till next Thursday. Slave of the government which drew strength and power from this class of people while condoning and perpetuating their exploitation as economic slaves. I soon understood what it required to sustain life and existence, and it certainly wasn't faith and prayer as the parson would have me believe. Money was the thing that mattered. If you had enough of it, people treat you like a king. Life becomes easy and comfortable. But if you had none, you were a vagabond and treated as such. And for you, life is risky, hard, and never comfortable. Everyone wanted some, and those who already had wanted more. There was none in my home, nor in the home next door, nor the home down the road. Everybody down there was poor. And so it was our children who couldn't get school places, Our streets that were piled high with garbage for weeks. It was us that the police brutalized and used for a target practice. Our sisters and women who were raped, dishonored, put to clean other people's floor. Our poor who filled the prisons, Bellevues, and poorhouses. So what was all the talk about justice, equality, and freedom, and people defending politicians? Noel Absalom lived in the cell to my left, another slave. Because of his family status, the police killed his twin brother as a suspect in the murder of a cop and then managed to convict him for the same crime. Although there was no evidence of a twin on the murder scene. At 27, he was appointed to die for a crime he never did. Nobody considered his right or the rights of his 3 children. He was a slave. Alfonso Phipps lived in the cell directly before me. He was another slave from the Johnstone ghetto. As a juvenile, he made a slip and got 5 years at Hilltop. In 1969, a riot broke out at that prison, and the place set on fire. When the smoke cleared, all the prisoners had escaped and a warder was found dead. Prisoners were used to give evidence against other prisoners, and when the longest trial in our history was over, Phipps and 5 others, the Hilltop 6, were railroaded and sentenced to die for the one warder. Had they been anything except slaves, they would surely have got off. Because they were poor, they made the best scapegoats. Michael Bernard was another slave who had been framed for a murder half the city knew and said he wasn't guilty of. The system still was preparing to hang him. Winston William was charged along with me. Didn't even know who he was supposed to have murdered, but that was irrelevant. Nobody had even accused me of killing the deceased. Nobody had even assumed in evidence that I had killed anyone. Yet here I was on death row. The average age of the people on the death row was 26. 83% of the prisoners originated from the lowest strata of society. 29% had begun working for a living before they were 14 years old. 70% had only reached grade school and 31% were totally illiterate. The fact that all of us were black and none could be absolutely sure of getting off the death row alive put us all in the same boat. Gradually, the common danger became more unambiguous to our collective consciousness. Babylon was the enemy, and if we didn't come together in unity and struggle, not many of us would live half the 70. The first expression of collective resistance was spontaneous. One night, just after the transfer to Gibraltar, I was awakened by a scream. One of the Hilltop 6, Baker, was being beaten by a gang of 5 warders. At first, there were one of 2 soft expressions of resentment. The warders continued their onslaught. The soft murmurs gradually became shouts calling the warders off Baker. As our shouts got louder, Baker rose from the floor, defending himself and shouting like mad. The warders were shouting to be heard above the noise. The prisoners and nearby blocks took up the shouts, and within a few minutes, the entire prison was in a state of pandemonium. 2 more warders arrived on the scene and armed with automatic shotguns, and Baker was immediately locked away, still shouting. Initially, the warders were confused. This was not the stereotype response. A prisoner just did not resist any authorized onslaught on his person. Beg, yes, bawl and grovel, but not resist. Something was amiss beyond their comprehension, something beyond the ambit of their training school course. Like us, they did not understand that oppression had finally evoked collective resistance. In confusion, they retreated. Long after they were gone, sporadic shouts still rang in the night as prisoners on the other block, who had been shouting all along, now wanted to know what was going on. After relaying Baker's condition and general run of things, we settled to reason among ourselves. It was a phenomenon that took time to logically explain, but since we had all the time, we reasoned on. The Hilltop 6 Absalom, Brian, Bernard, Winston, myself, and a couple of others were more aware of the future implications of what had just happened and knew that it was not like waters to leave a matter like this hanging in the air. This was a serious matter, and they would respond as Babylon prescribed, the one way they knew and were capable of: violence. It was just before dawn that we concluded our plan of resistance and stole some sleep before the sun came up. Before unlock, the grapevine was buzzing. Waters, those going off duty and those coming in for the day, were going to invade the row and discipline us for our collective impudence. Unlike other pre-invasion moments, there was less trembling this time, and when they arrived, we were alerted and prepared. No single prisoner can win any physical struggle with the staff. If he managed to knock over one or two, there are a dozen more to come. In the end, if they even had to recruit the army and the police, as they sometimes do, they'll come in tanks and with submachine guns. Finally, they'll get you. Neither individual aggression nor collective unarmed violence could overcome this perennial functionary of Babylon. Aggression was not on our mind. We were concerned with defending ourselves. Accordingly, it was unanimously agreed. It should be unanimously agreed. It was unanimously agreed that nobody would decel, that the slap pail would be positioned directly behind the door, that if the warder should decide to enter the cell, the prisoner would overturn the bucket. If they still came on, then it would be every man for himself in the defense of his person. After 40 of them crowded through the entrance, armed with riot buttons and coiled wire, issuing threats as they milled around in the passage, number 1 cell was unlocked and the prisoner ordered out. At first, he refused to decel, making the warders more angry. A warder who knew him coaxed him out on the promise that nobody wanted to beat him. They only wanted to search the cell. As soon as his foot touched the passage, the warder who had spoken to him knocked him to the ground, where he was promptly beaten up and thrown back into the cell. When they came to the next cell, the brother inside didn't wait for them to order him out. He kicked over his bucket of waste in the cell. If they wanted him so bad, they would have to step in the mess to reach him. And even then, the matter wouldn't be settled, for he was prepared to die right there alongside a warder in the filth. After this after this declaration, everybody immediately swore that we'd rather overturn the bucket and die right there in the mess alongside a warder in defense of our person than decel to be brutalized. Again, they were confused. It was not their style to go inside a prisoner's cell to beat him. The place was too small and anything could happen. They preferred to get you outside where they could swing a button and attack in gangs. Our threats to overturn the bucket also bothered them. Neither those due to go off duty nor those coming on duty were willing to dirty themselves to beat up a prisoner. One prisoner had done it already, and they couldn't tell if the rest were serious. Milling around in the passage, they issued threats of subsequent brutality. Only when the superintendent arrived on the scene did they begin to disperse. Immediately after the warders left, we requested an audience with the superintendent in an effort to put a rein to the whole thing. The superintendent sent us the usual reply. He was busy. A dangerous situation was brewing. Yet, the man who was supposed to be attending the good order of the institution said he was too busy. Anger mounted on the row, and the general attitude was that we couldn't let it rest there. The struggle had finally begun, and there was no turning back. We had to see the superintendent. A second request was sent to the superintendent, and again he was busy. By then it was too late to call it off. We couldn't. Everybody was boiling angry, and 2 warders had reinforced the staff bearing automatic shotguns. Two superintendent was in his office busy. The superintendent was in his office busy. An indefinite hunger strike was initiated, and by tea time, the message was clear. No food until we were given an audience with the superintendent. No word had been sent out to inform the outside world of the happenings, and we were sure the authorities would cut all visits for the duration of the disturbance. Nobody took any breakfast that morning. When the midday meal arrived, nobody took any. Soon after, the funk and a posse of warders came on the road to find out what was happening. Somebody directed him to my cell. I was lying on the mattress when his mouth appeared at the door. Get up, get up. I moved to stand by the door. Is what going on with down here? He asked. Just trying to see the superintendent. I deliberately left off the sir. What you want to see him for? He came down here this morning and knows what our complaint is about. I replied. We want to see him. Well, pausing for a split, the superintendent is busy and send me as his representative so you can give me the complaint. You can't help. He's the superintendent we want to see. He was here this morning and saw for himself. We want to see him. Well, Una just can't see him. Okay then, we will wait till he is finished. In the meantime, we're not eating any food. I just saw it. Turning away, the funk moved to the center of the passage and raising his voice spoke for the benefit of the entire ward. Since morning, he began, then paused for a spit. Una don't eat any food? For what reason? I don't know. The superintendent is busy now, and as soon as he is free, he will come to see you. However, a warning, Una, don't start anything in the place, for if Una mash up street, Una now mash up the prison. Over my dead body. Another spit. Take my foolish advice and eat on the food and behave on yourself, cause if Una try anything, Una not gonna like it. Pausing, he looked over to see if he had scared away our reserve. Every cell contained a prisoner who at the moment was unpretentiously hostile. The funk wasn't comfortable in such an atmosphere. Wanna hear what me say? He asked. No one in particular. No one answered. All right, all right. With that, the funk led away his posse. Upon his departure, the officer on duty on the row summoned the trustee and ordered the area the funk had polluted to be washed and disinfected. Below the row, the ground floor of Gibraltar warehouses prisoners labeled by the authorities as escapees, subversive and security risks. Apart from us on the row, no other section of prisoners suffered the severity of confinement and treatment as these brothers. Just before the evening meal was served, they shouted to inform us that if the superintendent didn't visit us by evening meal time, they would also refuse any food. That evening when the superintendent failed to turn up, the whole Gibraltar refused any food. When the day staff retired that evening, 2 sentries were posted at Gibraltar. Since the beginning of the strike, everybody had gone quiet and introvert. No longer did they stand at the bars peering out with melancholy gaze, tempered with fear and despair at the might of Babylon, or force their mind to accept their inability to change their situation in life. Many of those who had never in their lives made any collective sacrifice to the development of mankind were now moved by necessity to arm themselves with the power of collectiveness. Importantly, many came to realize for the first time that there was a difference between death on the gallows and death at the end of a gun or the string of a button. While being the spirit of resistance, a difference as distinct as ignominy from dignity. As distinct as ignominy from dignity, a new vibe emanated from this genesis of resistance, a vibe that gave full expression to the pent-up sorrows, suffering and trauma of the month and years of this life predicament. A vibe that urges us to fight with any weapons that system of oppression, degradation, and psychological torture enthusiastically imposed by the 20th century slave masters, euphemized as warders, a vibe that made you eager to take a punch at Babylon, unconcerned with what reprisal might follow. Next morning before breakfast, we again sent words to the superintendent requesting his presence on the row. This time, the reply was that he would see us after breakfast. As yet, he seemed unaware that unless he visited the row, there would be no breaking of the fast. We held firm and no food was eaten on the row or downstairs. The juveniles in cell block had also refused their food. The strike was spreading fast, and the warders now moved about the place in 2s and 3s, armed with riot buttons. Before the food was returned to the kitchen, the funk arrived on the row with a message from the superintendent. He would see some representative from the row in his office to address the complaint. Eventually, I was elected by hands and reluctantly accepted the task. Reluctantly because even though I felt committed to the struggle, I didn't feel like being a lamb to the slaughter. Suppose I went out there and the funk and his posse manufactured a reason to beat me up. My only assurance when I left was that if the funk and his posse harmed me, the hunger strike would continue and spread. A superintendent of a prison is a very important man, at least so he considers himself. His status is paradoxical. Out in society, he is accorded a soiled second-hand status and regarded with little less scorn and distrust than the convicts in his charge. Inside the prison, his status balloons. At the reach of the phone on his desk, hundreds of prisoners may suddenly be denied any or all of the few humane facilities of incarceration. Or a barefoot warder may find himself transferred to a faraway prison. Everyone called him Sir, salutes when they pass him and lift their caps in his presence. Prisoners grovel before his desk for survival, and his favorite lackey will anticipate his every wish, whether for a glass of ice water, a shoe shine, or information. To be sure he is king, the prison is kingdom. Like his status, his role is paradoxical. His position as superintendent makes him protector of the system and agent of Babylon. Simultaneously, he is charged by the public opinion and social conscience to be concerned with the collective welfare of his charges. Two conflicting roles, for the system is only maintained and perpetuated with force, fear, oppression, repression, buttons, barbed wire, and guns, none of which under the circumstances could ever be brought to serve the collective welfare of his charge. Human elements enter the equation here to force compromise between the extremes of protector of Babylon's kingdom and the father of his charges into an enigma where his function as superintendent is watered down to that of a mediator and a bureaucratic rubber stamp. A mediator in whose eyes and mind the warder is always right in the interest of his pension and good staff relationships, and a rubber stamp unwilling to initiate but content to implement whatever comes down to him from the top. As soon as I entered this office, the superintendent was ready with a red herring. How long now you on death row? He began. Since the 25th of February 1972, sir. You have a barrister? Yes, sir. Him visit you? Yes, sir. Tell me something. You know that when your time comes, the authorities will have to submit a report on your behavior, and that report will be very important to the final decision. Yes, sir. Then, why you down there stirring up trouble? You're wrong there, sir. I haven't stirred up anything. It is your warders that's stirring up the trouble down there. What happened to Baker? Some warders claim he was smoking in the cell and beat him down without any other reason. It is not the first, second, or third time this thing is happening. It's a regular thing, and only you can put a stop to it. Is that the problem? There is more. More. We can't have books from the library or newspaper like the other prisoners. When our clothes is sent to the washing party, they come back stinkier and more dirty than when they went down there. Other prisoners write with pen, but we are forced to write with pencil. We can't even have access to the sunlight. What you people don't seem to understand is that you are prisoners, criminals of the worst sort that the society say must be kept here till a final decision is made in your cases. As a criminal, you must not come here and expect to be treated like ordinary people. This is not a daycare center. Every day I receive reports from my warders about the cursing, ganja smoking, and foolishness he passed to puff away on his cigarette. Is tech on one take over this place? No answer was necessary. Well, make I tell you something. We're not going to take over this place as long as I there. And I'm not going to call government that I can. I'm not going to tell government that I can't control UNO. If we can't manage UNO, we will send for the army and police. And if we even have to send for the fire brigade, Girls Guide and Boy Scouts, UNO not going to take over this place. He had moved from his enigma to the extreme of protector of Babylon's kingdom, casting rationality to the wind. All the while UNO come to this place and want to tell me how to run the prison. But it won't work. Before that, I put UNO behind my desk and I go in the cell. He was raving now with some unknown source of anger. You know that is a serious thing UNO going on with both hunger strike. Yes, sir, but we figure it is the only way to highlight the problem. So what UNO really want? All we want is for you to restrain the warders from invading the row, and we would like to have the facilities enjoyed by other prisoners where such facilities do not conflict with security. Make I tell you something. Only a few people in this place as prisoners that I have not tried to help. I am the kind of superintendent a prisoner can talk to, and as long as it don't conflict with security, you have my support. He switched from the protector of Babylon role to the role of father of his charge. I am not the kind of man, he continued, that deal with any fear or favor. If a man wrong, him just wrong. I don't know what took place down there night before last, but you can tell the fellows on the road that I am investigating the whole thing. As regards to the facilities you are asking for, I will have to discuss the whole thing with my staff and the directors. In the meantime, I beg you to behave yourself down there and let us have a good staff inmate relationship. Finish off with this foolishness about hunger strike. Eat on food and behave yourself. With that, the discussion came to an end. The following week, we were granted some of the basic institutional rights. We could now have books and newspapers from the library, write our letters with a pen, have a bath every other day. For the first time, toothbrushes, towels, and soap were allowed to be kept inside the cells. No word was heard about the superintendent's promise to investigate the incident with Baker. Nothing changed about that. The struggle had begun. Yes, that's true. Go out itself. The struggle had begun, you know? Yeah, so the next chapter, chapter 6, slave driver. I'm now going to start slave driver today, you see? So we just catch a little practice, so that's, you know, the infidel them sister we are try and we continue to try. And we don't have no fear of trying, you know, see, because we don't really keep secret. Secret change, secret maintain we struggle and we suffering, you know, see. A Babylon teach you that, so that's, we just die a slave. We are a slave to our secrets, them and our inabilities. So we don't get to develop further, whether on our own or with assistance through assistance. You see, especially, it's evident, especially with the Windrush struggle and most of our immigration claims in Brittany as Jamaican. Most Jamaican who got deported since between 2004 and upwards were deported illegally. You see. But enough people don't realize that because everybody keeps them things secret and just do it like so well, and there's a shame and there's a disgrace on themselves. Seems to them just hold it to themselves and just take the marching order. But it was a system that forfeited the claim, that the people them money, application money and everything, and openly admit that they weren't stamping any application. They weren't even checking any application for like 5 years. You understand what I say? Yet still all of these people were rendered illegal, overstayers and things like that, and were forcefully removed from the country. You see, I not validate Babylon wickedness and Babylon sin for them by keeping them secret through pride. Anyway, give thanks, share, like, and subscribe. I want you. You see.